where the Lord has spoken with me. On this past night, the Lord spoke with me about a major event that is coming to take place on the earth here. I see a very huge explosion. There's going to be a very huge explosion, and I see in that dream the Lord showed me a huge explosion, and in that dream I see a lot of billowing of very black smoke, a cloud of smoke, and that cloud comes, billows into the sky, and it looks more like some chemical weapons or chemicals that are going to explode. They look more like chemical weapons. There's going to be a huge explosion, and they seem the black dark smoke billows from that explosion, and then chemicals disperse into the air. The smoke disperses into the air. It looks more like an explosion from chemical weapons or a chemical. But this is going to visit the earth. This is going to happen on the earth. But again, a huge explosion. The smoke that billows from there, the Lord showed me dark smoke, very, very thick dark. It looks like they speak chemicals. And then that smoke billows. But there's going to be a huge explosion that billows a huge cloud of thick dark smoke, and then the smoke disperses into the air. May those who have ears listen. The voice of the Lord, He has spoken. And when these things come to pass, you shall know that surely indeed the Messiah is coming. Jehovah has spoken with me today, and this is urgent. The Lord takes me to a place. There is a complex of buildings in that place. Then all of a sudden, we begin to run. The Lord puts me there, so I run. People are running for their lives. The roof, I thought it's an earthquake. So people are shouting, earthquake. I thought it's an earthquake. And we are running. The walls are falling down and so forth. And however, I see the roof, an explosion through the roof. An explosion through the roof. And as we're running to the next building, from outside we meet a lot of shattering that has fallen, which are very reminiscent of an earthquake. And so that's why we're running, saying, is it an earthquake? So we're running. I was running with everyone in there, saying it's an earthquake. I was shouting it's an earthquake. They were shouting it's an earthquake, because we're seeing a lot of glass, a lot of walls have fallen, crumbled, and this building, the roof, big explosion over the roof. That's when again I stopped. I said, is this really an earthquake or this is an explosion? So we're running to the next side. With the next building, it also explodes. We were fearing it's an earthquake, so we're looking for where to hide. I thought it's an earthquake because we were shouting earthquake, earthquake as we were running and meeting a lot of fallen walls and glass, running to the next side. Then there was an explosion over the roof. A huge explosion over the roof of this building in this complex, in that particular complex, in the dream flood. But we were running, shouting, and people were saying, earthquake, earthquake. So we're running, very violent. There was nowhere to run to. It was a very dreadful situation. There was really nowhere to run to. We had nowhere to run to because it was all over. As we were running towards the next building, the first main building is where there was that shaking, violent shaking, and then the explosion over the roof. When we came out is when we saw the roof explode. And then we are running to the next building and then meeting all the shattered glass and the stones and everything. Everybody's running. Then realize the next building is also shaking. So this is very big situation. So I see people running. I see very serious emergency. People are running for their lives, but there is nowhere to get to. And the building explodes from the roof on top. big smoke and over the roof. And then as we are running, we meet fallen glass, and so meaning this place has also been shaken out here. And then we are running to the next building, but it's also about to explode or about to collapse. Again, the Lord took me at about 1 o'clock today, and it took me to a place. We were in a building. I could even see some people were sitting there talking. It was a building place. It looks like a big building complex. And then all of a sudden, we began to run, and people were shouting, earthquake, earthquake. So we were running away. And the buildings were shaking and collapsing and what? But when we stepped out, then there was the explosion over the roof, that went up as we were running. So even we feared to go to the next building because there was a lot of shattered glass and fallen walls and what, as we were running to try to go to the next one, which was also about to collapse or about to explode. The Messiah is coming. Right now, the Lord is purifying worship. He's purifying the hearts of men, preparing them for the coming kingdom of God. May the Lord bless you. Thank you. Asha.
And on this day, June 5th, 2020,
na katika siku hii tarehe 5 mwezi wa 6 mwaka 2020,
I give the prophecy of earthquake coming to the earth
ninapeana unabii wa tetemeko la ardhi ambalo linakuja duniani
and a big explosion happening at the same time on the earth.
na pia mlipuko mkubwa kabisa ukitendeka kwa wakati huo juu ya dunia,
Very violent.
la fujo kabisa.
There was a massive explosion. I mean, something the likes of I've never seen before.
It felt like an earthquake followed by a huge blast.
Breaking news this evening, there has been a huge explosion in the Lebanese capital, Beirut.
A massive explosion has torn through the Lebanese capital, Beirut.
We have breaking news of a major explosion in the city of Beirut, Lebanon.
Just after 6 p.m. local time on Tuesday, the 4th of August, an explosion ripped through Beirut's port. Videos from the scene suggest there was one smaller explosion. And then roughly 30 seconds later, this.
The Jordanian Seismological Observatory said the Beirut explosion was equivalent to a magnitude 4.5 earthquake on the Richter scale.
Large parts of Beirut are in ruins tonight from a blast that shook the capital. So far, we know at least 100 people have been killed, with around 4,000 others injured. The scale of the explosion is just astonishing. Buildings were destroyed far from the port where the blast was centred, and the damage is up to 10 kilometres away, meaning the whole city was affected. The blast was even heard by people in Cyprus, 200 kilometres off the coast.
The blast at the Lebanese capital's port struck with the force of an earthquake. People filming a warehouse fire were suddenly knocked off their feet by a massive explosion. Windows kilometres away from the site were blown out. Several thousand people have been injured. They streamed onto the streets, bleeding from glass cuts and worse.
I don't know what happened. I was fishing and I heard there was a fire. I started to head home. I heard something explode and then this happened.
Downtown Beirut looked like a war zone.
At least 100 people are confirmed dead.
But the damage was spread across the city.
My car was down there. It rolled over. The glass cut me up. My car was like this.
I see a very huge explosion.
The blast struck with the force of a 3.5 magnitude earthquake. This was the aftermath.
And as we're running to the next building, from outside we meet a lot of shattering that has fallen because we're seeing a lot of glass, a lot of walls have fallen, crumbled, and meeting a lot of fallen walls and glass. And then we are running to the next building and then meeting all the shattered glass and the stones and everything. Everybody's running. Then realize the next building is also shaking. And then as we are running, we meet fallen glass.
Windows shattered in buildings across the city and damaged cars on the roads near the port.
The scale of the explosion is just astonishing. Buildings were destroyed far from the port where the blast was centred, and the damage is up to 10 kilometres away.
It's okay, baby.
This is where the explosion happened. 4 kilometers away, in the St. Mar-Meroun church, a priest and his congregation were taking part in Mass.
A night of horror in Beirut, with sirens blaring into the next morning. A blast leveled a big part of the city and left many without homes. At around 6 p.m. on Tuesday, a massive explosion at Beirut's port shook the Lebanese capital, leaving dozens dead and thousands injured, according to initial reports. The explosion was so strong that it was felt in the island of Cyprus, around 240 kilometers away. While people were filming the initial explosion at the port, which appeared to many as a distant fire, a much larger explosion followed, leaving many in shock. Lebanon's Prime Minister Hassan Diab said that an investigation into the blast would focus on an estimated 2,750 tons of ammonium nitrate stored at a warehouse in Beirut port, where it had remained for 6 years. The Jordanian Seismological Observatory said the Beirut explosion was equivalent to a magnitude 4.5 earthquake on the Richter scale.
I see the roof, an explosion through the roof, running to the next side. Then there was an explosion over the roof. Ooh, a huge explosion over the roof of this building in this complex. An explosion.
2 enormous explosions shook Beirut, Lebanon today.
Videos from the scene suggest there was one smaller explosion. And then roughly 30 seconds later, this.
This was the fire in Beirut port. The flashes, they say, were fireworks. Then something much bigger ignited.
Blasts that shook a city and injured thousands. This was the first, coming just after 6 in the evening at Beirut's main port, sending up a plume of thick smoke. Beneath it, fires raging and flashes of light, filmed by nearby residents. None of them could have guessed what would happen next. A second massive explosion that some described as like an earthquake.
I see a very huge explosion.
The blast changed tens of thousands of lives in a matter of moments. In what should have been the best day of her life, Dr. Isra Sablani poses for her wedding photos.
This is CNN Breaking News.
There was a massive explosion. I mean, something the likes of I've never seen before.
It felt like an earthquake followed by a huge blast that blew out the windows in this, what was once our studio. We understand that the hospitals are overwhelmed at this point. This is the absolute worst thing that could have happened to Lebanon.
Of the CNN Bureau have been completely blown out. I'm looking at the buildings all around me. Many windows are also smashed. There's lots of glass and other debris in the street. There is still smoke rising from the port, and there was an odd red cloud hanging over the downtown district of Beirut.
Well, this explosion took place in the port area. It was preceded by some sort of fire. It appears in a warehouse. which according to the official Lebanese National News Agency contained fireworks. But what we felt, and in this building, this is where CNN's office used to be, it felt like an earthquake followed by a huge blast that blew out the windows in this, what was once our studio, and the window frames as well. Just panning the camera around, you can get an idea of the level of damage that happened. And this damage, of course, is duplicated throughout much of central Beirut. And in fact, I just got off the phone with a friend here in Beirut who said throughout the entire time she's lived here, through the civil war, never has she experienced and felt an explosion this large. And the same goes for me. I've been through wars here, civil wars, nothing along the lines of this explosion. Initially, I thought it was an earthquake. I thought that's what it was, but of course it was followed by this massive explosion which blew out the windows in this room, the windows next to us, our front glass doors, our neighbors. Every building has lost its windows, the frames blown out.
Just after 6 p.m. local time on Tuesday, the 4th of August.
The destruction is overwhelming. This is the port in Lebanon's capital, Beirut. Rubble everywhere, buildings blasted open, vehicles flipped and smashed. Those caught in it, those who survived, dazed.
Tuesday's massive explosion in Beirut has left much of the city destroyed and at least 135 people dead and thousands more injured. Buildings near the port where the blast occurred were reduced to rubble, with the destruction spanning kilometers from the explosion site. Windows were blown out of homes and shops up to 4 kilometers from the port. And Beirut's airport, which is more than 9 kilometers from the explosion site, also sustained.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News.
Much of Beirut is shattered this morning by one of the most powerful peacetime explosions ever. Look closely and you can see what happened. This is the port as a fire rages, popping and sparking. The flames swell to a noisy roar until the second blast. Other angles show the blast wave crumbling buildings like sandcastles. Traveling faster than the speed of sound, people couldn't get out of the way of the blast. Then came the bang. They filmed from passing cars miles away. A mushroom cloud hung over Beirut.
It's like an earthquake. I couldn't even take my breath.
The governor rushed to the scene and broke down, saying it reminded him of Hiroshima. The shockwave barreled through shops.
The footage, the pictures that you see on media is nothing compared to what's the situation is in Lebanon. What's the reality is. It's doomed, it's ruined, it's damaged, it's broken. Every single house in Beirut, it's ruined within 30 seconds. The damage is more than what people see on the media outside Lebanon. Beirut is down. Beirut is gone. People are dead.
George Faroun has come with a friend to see what they can salvage from the remains of his parents' apartment, which looked directly onto Beirut's port. Tuesday's blast turned it into a moonscape, a panorama of utter destruction. Dried blood marks the spot where his mother was resting in bed when the explosion sent a wall slamming on top of her.
Look what happened.
It's still so hard to wrap your mind around the enormity, the size of this blast. You can see a ship over there blown onto its side, and this massive area right here, this is where the storage unit housing that ammonium nitrate once stood. But this has largely shifted from being a search and rescue operation to one of recovery and cleanup at this stage. There were entire structures, buildings. There was a duty-free over there. All of it has been completely and utterly wiped out. The force of the blast spat out the contents of storage containers and then largely buried them under the rubble.
This is ground zero underneath this pile of destroyed grain. That they are standing on one of the columns of the silo that contained the country's grain supplies. Because of this destruction caused by the explosion, that means that the country has less than a month's supply of grain. But apart from the food insecurity problems, I'd like to just turn you round and maybe take you over here and show you a bit of the level of destruction. All that is the city of Beirut, if you like, and all those buildings that you can see in front of you are pretty much all damaged. They've all suffered terribly insecure and may have to be levelled or certainly restored in some way. Huge impact on the Lebanese economy, and one which the Lebanese economy minister was saying earlier today they simply can't recover from this.
First there was a fire, a huge column of smoke rising from Beirut's port. Then a massive explosion. The force of the blast was so strong, its shockwaves blew out glass and tore buildings across the city, ripping balconies off onto the streets, even registering on US seismographs used to measure earthquakes. At least 100 people are confirmed dead, thousands are injured. The city's wounded in desperate need of care, looking to St. George's Hospital, but its medics can't enter the building since it is on the verge of collapse. They lost 4 nurses themselves. The sun rose Wednesday morning, revealing the devastating scene at Beirut's port. The explosion linked to 2,750 tons of ammonium nitrate stored unsafely in a warehouse, the same material as the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995, but reportedly 1,000 times stronger. Officials aren't commenting on the cause of the explosion.
The port of Beirut has been reduced to a shadow of its former bustling self after the massive explosion. U.S. President Donald Trump is monitoring the situation in Beirut closely.
Let me begin by sending America's deepest sympathies to the people of Lebanon. Our prayers go out to all the victims and their families. The United States stands ready to assist Lebanon.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi expressed shock and sorrow at the incident in Beirut. He said that the country's thoughts and prayers were with the victims' families. France's President Emmanuel Macron expressed solidarity with the people of Lebanon. Relief material from France is being transported to Lebanon. Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif announced on Twitter that his country is ready to assist Lebanon in this time of need. Even Israel has offered to send humanitarian aid to Lebanon, despite the ongoing tensions between the two countries. Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson expressed shock at the scenes that played out in Beirut. He said that the UK stands ready to help Lebanon. Saudi Arabia also expressed condolences to the families of the victims. The kingdom said that it stands in solidarity with the government and the people of Lebanon. Germany is working to provide immediate support to Lebanon. Australia's Prime Minister Scott Morrison also sent out a message of solidarity. He said that Australia stands ready to provide support to the Lebanese people.
Lebanese government has stood down following last Tuesday's catastrophic explosion in Beirut.
The Prime Minister gave his resignation to the President, but his government remains until a new one can be found.
لذلك أعلن اليوم استقالة هذه الحكومة.
The state is out in force in a shattered capital, carrying guns though, not brooms.
And when these things come to pass, you shall know that surely indeed the Messiah is coming.